A plan on what can happen in terms of fracking in North Yorkshire is being considered this week. A blueprint on how any future applications will be dealt with is being studied with a fine-tooth comb by a planning inspector to make sure that it's legal and to make sure that it's effective. It will cover York, wider North Yorkshire and the North York Moors. But of course, fracking is very controversial. We have covered both sides of the argument here on BBC Radio York. But in the last few weeks, we've seen a very dramatic twist in this long-running controversy. Third Energy have been removing equipment from its site at Kirkby Misperton, and protesters have started packing up their camp as fracking isn't now expected to happen until the autumn at the earliest. So, is village life returning to normal? BBC Radio York's Mike Kemp has been finding out.
Say it loud, say it clear.
We don't want no fracking here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
We don't want no fracking here.
Life in Kirkby Misperton has been anything but normal for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I have to inform you that you may be arrested for this offence, and I would ask you to think about how that can affect you and your family and friends and anything you wish to do in the future. Are you willing to move?
Standoffs between police and protesters, repeated road closures, convoys of lorries bringing equipment onto the site.
I have to inform you that reasonable force may be used to move you from your current location. Anybody willing to move?
Some villagers, opposed to what they called the antisocial behaviour of the protesters, described the situation as something akin to a war zone. But now change is afoot, with protesters packing up their camp and Third Energy removing equipment, saying they won't be fracking before the autumn. One of the last convoys leaving Third Energy's site rumbles through the village under police escort. It passes a roadside notice, not the usual anti-fracking ones which have dotted verges hereabouts. This one simply reads, Bingo Night, Friday, 16th of March, 7 p.m.
I just hope things go back to normal.
It's a view echoed by many villagers.
It will be nice, and just to have the village looking a bit tidier as well, because it is an eyesore down the bottom, and I know they're not all going from down there, but maybe when the weather gets better, things will look better and won't look such a mess. Apart from that, I'd just be glad to see the back of them, to be honest.
The only thing that annoys me is the cars parked on that main road, which, when they go, that'll be great.
But do you think that there will be a sense of relief for a while, at any rate, within the village?
Probably, yeah. Certainly among some residents, there would be, definitely.
It does feel slightly calmer. It's not really affected us per se, because we all work and live outside of the village, but it does feel like it's starting to become a little bit more tranquil and a little bit less frantic when I take the dog for a walk.
It was a nightmare when we first started bringing things off, road closures and what have you, but the police were as bad as anything. It was like a police state at times, the way they were dealing with it. So it's a relief in that sense that we can progress through the village without interference. I suppose, yes, we shall enjoy a summer. To think that it all has to come back and be the same, carry on, I'm not looking forward to that.
That's BBC Radio York's Mike Kemp finding out how village life is now in Kirkby Misperton. Now, we're discussing fracking again this morning because a blueprint plan that will cover the whole of North Yorkshire is being considered. The idea is to make it simpler to make decisions on if and where companies can frack. Well, after the travel news, I'll be speaking to the owner of the Castle Howard estate about what he would like to see in that plan. More now on the discussions of how future fracking applications in North Yorkshire should be dealt with. Nicolas Howard, who owns and runs the Castle Howard estate, joins me in the studio this morning. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Fill us in on how you are affected by fracking in North Yorkshire.
Well, the first time I became aware of it, my primary concern was whether the buildings for which I'm responsible were going to fall down, because there were lots of stories about earthquakes, about seismic events. I've been slightly reassured about that, but in the process of looking into it, I have become very, very worried about the whole process. It doesn't seem to be properly controlled. People know very little about it. There's an awful lot of unknowns about what will come up when they start bringing the gas out. But I think in terms of the plan that we're discussing this morning, the minerals and waste plan, I feel really quite sorry for any of the local government bodies involved in this, because every time a part of local government starts to try and take a decision, a responsible decision, about whether fracking should or shouldn't occur, it gets taken out of their hands. And it looks as if that's about to happen again, because there is an inquiry going on at the moment in the Housing, Communities and Local Government Committee on planning guidance for fracking. And they're discussing whether to make fracking part of the national infrastructure. And if that happens, local authorities will no longer have any say in the granting of licences.
But this current blueprint that we're looking at for the whole of North Yorkshire, do you welcome this plan?
Well, I certainly welcome anything which tries to look into it properly, but if you read through the plan, unfortunately, in a lot of crucial areas, there's a great deal of vagueness, and other matters aren't dealt with at all. For instance, one of the biggest companies involved in all this, they hold about half the licences in the country, INEOS, are not just looking for gas for us to burn on our cookers. One of the byproducts of the process, they hope, will be bringing up ethane. And they use ethane to make plastics as a feedstock for plastics in their Grangemouth factory. And when they were asked the other day at a public meeting whether it was true that 37% of the gas would be this ethane, they laughed and said, well, of course you can't tell at the moment, which you can't, and they're quite right about that. But the last word the INEOS spokesman made on that was, hopefully it will be more. So we're talking about the biggest licence holder in the country trying to take out gas not to deal with the national requirement for gas, but to service their privately owned factories.
The inspector is also going to look at the call for a buffer of 3.5 kilometres for the area of natural beauty and how it would work and whether it's the right distance. What are your views on that?
Well, the trouble is that, of course, even if they're drilling 3.5 kilometres away, they can come in horizontally underneath. This is the nature of the HVHF method, high volume hydraulic fracturing. They go down vertically and then slowly turn a right angle and come horizontally across. And there's no real limit as to how far they can go on that. So they can come right underneath the national parks and right underneath the AONBs, almost as if they were coming straight down.
Some people would say that in a time where energy is getting more expensive, you have people in fuel poverty being able to frack and provide cheaper energy. It's justified that our national parks and places of beauty people can frack there.
Well, yeah, if it were true that it was definitely going to provide cheaper energy, then that might be an argument. There's no indication yet that it will be any cheaper than imported gas.
The world is not a particularly stable time. It's not a stable time at the moment. So somebody would say that maybe it's right for us to focus on using the UK's own natural resources.
Well, again, if that were entirely true, it'd be wonderful. But unfortunately, if you're going to look at the larger picture, you also have to look at the ecological effects of this gas. And if you combine the burning of the gas, the burning of the methane, and what they call the fugitive emissions from the well sites, this gas is as dirty as coal. So it is not helping the broader picture in any way.
What would you like to see in this plan? What safeguards would you like to see?
Well, I think it's very, very important, if we are going to go ahead with it, that there are proper what's called baseline surveys done beforehand. And that means that you know exactly what the state of the seismic activity, what the state of the air, what the state of the water, what the state of the roads is, and many other factors. And that should really be happening before any activities take place at all. And that includes the seismic surveys, which are the things that are going on in this area at the moment. INEOS are just trying to get onto a lot of people's lands in order to conduct seismic surveys to find out exactly what the makeup of the shale is. I believe that that is a part of the whole process of the exploration for shale gas, and therefore all baseline surveys should be in place before any activity takes place at all.
Nicolas Howard, thank you for coming on this morning. That's Nicolas Howard, who owns and runs the Castle Howard estate.